All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for making time to be with us today for California Humanities Grant Program webinar. This is our general Grantseeker Workshop. We host a few of these every year, and they're kind of a digest of all of the ongoing funding opportunities that we have at any given time. So we're really excited you can join us. We've got the full California Humanities program staff on today's call, so you'll have a chance to hear from all of the program officers and grants manager that we have on staff and ask your questions. The way today's session will work is we'll have about an hour online together in webinar format. We'll start by introducing you to California Humanities, who we are, what we fund, what we do here. We'll also introduce ourselves around the table so you can meet some of the officers who run the grant programs. Then we'll go into a breakdown of each of the grant opportunities on offer, including the Humanities for All, California Documentary Project, Library Innovation Lab, and the newest program, Civics and Humanities Middle Grades Grant, on offer for the second year. We'll also give you a session on the application process and tips for putting together a competitive application with some insights from our grants manager, Brett Connor. And then we'll leave, a break at the end for questions and answers. We'll also take Q&A throughout. So if you have a question at any point, just put it in the Q&A box, please, and we'll take it in order of section. So if you have a question about CDP, we might not answer it until we get to the end of the CDP question, but just stay with us and we'll take all the questions. I also wanted to let you know about a special bonus session we're having after the webinar from 12 o'clock to 12:30. We'll have an informal office hour meeting. This is a separate Zoom meeting where you can share your camera and your mic, talk with staff in real time. We'll have breakout rooms for each of the grant lines. If you have a project idea you'd like to pitch, if you have a really nitty-gritty question that's only going to pertain to you, feel free to hold on to it. Join us at a separate link that our colleague Beth will put in the chat today. It will bring you to a separate meeting room, and then you'll have 30 minutes with our staff to chat in real time. So I hope you can stay on. We would love to speak with you. As I mentioned, we'll take questions through the Q&A, and we are recording this session, and if you are signed up and in this room, you will automatically receive a copy of it. We will also post it to our YouTube channel. Okay, so for those of you who are new to California Humanities, just a little bit of information about us. We are an independent nonprofit organization, and we're the partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities, the statewide partner for the California precinct. We've been around since 1975, around the time when the NEH was created, and we promote the humanities as a relevant and meaningful path to understand the human condition. And we do this through producing, funding, creating, and supporting humanities-based projects and programs across the state through grants, direct programs, lectures, conversations, resources, tools for humanities practitioners that we've been sharing for over 40 years now. We've awarded over $38 million in grants across the state, reaching every congressional district, which is our ongoing goal to reach all of the regional diversity of California. So if you have any questions about California Humanities, let us know in the chat. We'd be happy to answer your questions. As I mentioned, we're joined by the full team today. So although her name isn't up here, we have Beth Segura, our wonderful operations coordinator. If you need any technical assistance, please chat to Beth. We're also joined by Brett Connor, our grants manager.
Good morning.
Felicia Kelly, project and evaluation director. Felicia is the program officer for Library Innovation Lab and Humanities for All project grants.
Hi,
John
all.
Lightfoot, director of media and journalism programs. It's always a little awkward coordinating these brief radio hellos. And John is the program officer, longtime program officer of the CDP program, and also NextGen and the journalism fellowship that you'll learn more about. And we're joined by Lucena Lauvalle, the program officer for Quick Grants and Literature and Medicine. And then lastly, I am Kirsten Vega. I'm associate program officer, and I work on Civics and Humanities middle grades grants. So now we'd like to hear a little bit from you. We're wondering, how did you hear about this webinar? Awesome. Thanks for letting us know. It sounds like our e-news is getting around to a lot of you, as well as word of mouth, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We'll pass that on to our comms team. Thank you. Next, we're wondering which programs or program you might be interested in learning about today. Is there one program you have your focus on? Are you hoping to find out what might be a good fit for your organization? Let us know. Great. Well, it looks like there's a range of interest in the room today, some for CDP, some for the Humanities for All programs, a few folks for Library Innovation Lab and the Civics Middle Grades Grant. Awesome. We're glad you can join. Now we'd like a little more specificity. What do you have the most questions about? You can choose multiple categories here. Do you want to know about the process of putting together an application? Are you looking for support with the grant portal? Are you wondering about working with humanities advisors or how to select the right humanities advisor for your project? Are you wondering more about how to integrate humanities content and methodologies into your work, or maybe a nitty-gritty question about the budget or funding requirements, eligibility? We are here to cover all of these areas, I'll say. We do touch on all of these in the webinar, but it's always good to know where the most questions lay. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm seeing strong interest in the application process, some questions about humanities advisors, and then kind of an equal distribution around the content budget and eligibility questions. Okay, great. Just a couple more questions for you all. We're wondering if you have received a grant before or applied. In this case, we're wondering if you've ever applied, whether or not you've received the grant. Okay, a lot of first-time applicants in the room, but we have some veterans too. Great. Glad you guys can all join us. If you've applied before in the last 5 years, I think you'll find a lot of similarity in our online application, which we've streamlined and kept the same for a few years now. If you haven't applied in a while, I think you'll be happy to find that we now have a fully online application that is really user-friendly. Have you received a grant before? Great. So some current and former grantees are with us, and then some folks who have not yet received a grant. Great. Yeah. And then one last question for you all. We're wondering where you're joining us from. We have offices in Los Angeles and in the Bay Area. Our staff is statewide. We cover all regions. Wondering where you're joining from. Great. Yeah, great to see some people in the room from our office hubs in the LA and Bay Area regions, but also wonderful to have some of you joining us from the Central Coast and the Central Valley and the far north, the OC. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you all for sharing your answers. It's really great to learn more about what brings you to the webinar, and hopefully that will help us serve you better as we go through our questions. Pass it over to Luciana.
Hi, thank you, Kirsten, and thank you all for sharing a little bit about where your questions are coming from and some of the things you're interested in learning. I thought I would jump in and just kind of give a little bit of a background about one of the things that is really central to our grant making, whether it's the CDP grants, whether it's Humanities for All, whether it's civics and humanities, and that is the importance of the public humanities. So you'll be hearing these words coming up several times throughout our presentation today, but I just wanted to kind of give us a really great grounding in really the rationale for all of the grants that we're going to be talking about today. And so for us, one of the central focal points of our grants is the public humanities. And what this means is that these are projects, these are programs that use the humanities, whether it is a method, whether it is a body of knowledge, whether it is, an approach that centers public learning experiences for people of all ages that occur outside of formal educational environments. So we'll talk a little bit about the nuances that are very specific to each of our grant programs. But for us, this means anything and everything from a walking tour, as you see in this image, to documentary films, to some of the other great program modalities that you'll see in our presentation today. So just wanted to kick us off with a good foundation in, the focal point of what our programs are intended to support. I'm going to pass it back to Kirsten for the next slide.
Thanks for that, Luciana. So as Luciana mentioned, we have a number of grant programs ongoing. We also do some non-grant making programs. Just so you know, you can check out these on our website, Literature in Medicine, a reading and discussion program for medical staff at VA and Kaiser hospitals through California, the Emerging Journalist Fellowship, which John could tell you more about in the live office hours session following this, supporting community college journalists as they start their careers in broadcasting and media journalism. Then Tools of the Trade, which is an ongoing video bank of tips and resources for public humanities practitioners. So check that out on our YouTube channel. And as we mentioned, we have these 4 ongoing grant programs, which we'll be breaking down for you in just a moment. But first, we wanted Brett to clarify some of the key terms we'll be using in this session.
Thanks, Kirsten. So yes, you will see these terms throughout our application process. You'll hear about these terms as we speak today, as well as some of the documentation that you'll find on our website. So first off is the project director. So that is the person on the application or on the project that is really in charge of executing this project and your proposed project. And the project director also is our California Humanities or a primary contact for your proposal, and if you are awarded, in carrying out that grant. The second one, authorizing official, is someone who in your application process will sign off on all the materials you've submitted. So it depends on how your organization is laid out. This may be a development director, this may be a grants manager, this may be your executive director, whoever it may be. That will be the person that will sign off and certify and say, yes, all of the materials you've submitted on your proposal are accurate and true. And if you are awarded a grant, that will also be the person that will sign and execute the grant agreement. Third, humanities advisor. Humanities advisors, some of our grant programs require a humanities advisor. Some do not. All of them are. We hope that you will use a humanities advisor, but an advisor is someone who is an expert in their field, an expert that can come and talk about, advise you with your project through a humanities lens. So whether they're a culture bearer, an expert in their field, someone who can help you shape your proposal and your project with the humanities in the forefront. A fiscal sponsor, if you are not, if your organization is not a 501c3 nonprofit, or if you are an independent artist, an independent humanities practitioner, culture bearer, you will need a fiscal sponsor to apply through. we at California Humanities are only allowed to grant 2 organizations. So if you are an individual who wants to put on a humanities project and submit a proposal, you will need a fiscal sponsor to do that. If you do use a fiscal sponsor, then you are then the subrecipient. So if we grant your project and you're using a fiscal sponsor, your fiscal sponsor technically receives the grant, technically receives those funds. You are then the subrecipient. Matching funds is a budgetary issue. Some of our grant lines, most of them require some sort of matching funds. A few do not and are optional. They're always encouraged, of course. And what we mean by a matching fund is if you are awarded, let's say, $10,000, we need you to say that $10,000 is also going to be matched by other places, by other things, by other donors, other grants, maybe your own organization's putting funds into this project as well. So when you're submitting budget information to us, whether it's in a proposal or whether it's at the end of a grant period for a final report, we want to see what other funds have contributed to the success of your project, along with funds from California Humanities. So in your project proposals, you'll be required to submit some sort of a budget in a form, and then you will also be required to list where those matching funds, how much those would be, where they'll be coming from. All right, so who can apply? So now we're kind of getting into some nitty-gritty details here. The first thing to note is that we only accept applications from eligible institutions or organizations, not individuals, like I said earlier. Profits may be fiscally sponsored by eligible nonprofits, government agencies, tribal governments, universities, museums are all things that would all organizations that are eligible. Most come from 501c3 nonprofits. Universities, community colleges, everything like that are all eligible to apply. So you must have that tax exempt status, or you must be part of municipal government, whether that's a city government or a county government, or be a fiscal sponsor that also has tax exempt status. All organizations or fiscal sponsors must be located in the state of California. The only exception to that rule is when we're talking about the California Documentary Project with the production or research and development tracks. All of our other grant tracks, sponsors, organizations must be located in California. Also, when we're talking about applicant eligibility, applicants should not have an active grant or a pending application already submitted with us. You can really only submit one application at a time, and you can only have one grant at a time. There are pre-approved multi-project fiscal sponsors. Those organizations who have that status, they already know who they are. If you have a question about that, whether your organization fits that bill, you can contact me and we can work on that together. Also, organizations and project directors that have been previously awarded a Humanities for All grant are required to wait 12 months, a little bit of a waiting period after they've submitted their previous final report before they can apply for another Humanities for All grant. On our webpage, you will see the red tab in the middle called Funding Opportunities. That's the best place to kind of, at a glance, look at all the different offerings, whether it's CDP, Humanities for All, Library Innovation Lab, middle grades. You can see what type of, or what time of year that we typically offer those grants, when the application deadlines are. Ballpark figures about the funding opportunities, funding amounts for those different grant lines, and also who to contact with more questions. All right, we'll take a second to see if there are questions here. Let's see. Can you talk about the application review process? Yes, we will talk about that in a later section. So hold on to that, Brian. Let's see. If we have been awarded a grant from another funder, can we use that to satisfy matching funds? Absolutely. Great question.
I think the only asterisk on that is if you have federal funds. So if you have a grant from NEA,
good point.
Then you're not able to use those federal funds towards your match. But otherwise, yes, exactly what Brett said. You can use your grants to match. You can also use in-kind services, donations. We'll talk about that in a later part of the session, though.
All right, moving on to Humanities for All.
Thanks so much, Brett. So I'm here to really help us dip our toe into the first grant line that we'll be, or the first set of grant lines that we'll be talking about, and that is Humanities for All. This is a grant program that was started in 2016, 2017, and was designed to create, to provide funds for organizations that were providing programming that responded to the needs and interests of Californians across our state. One thing we'll be delving into a little bit is how this grant program is intended to support projects that encourage greater participation in the humanities, with the humanities, and also, to reach out to underserved and new audiences amongst the programmers. So we'll take a look at another slide. And so some key elements of the HFA grant lines are firstly that these projects that are supported with these funds are participatory. So that means that your project includes some sort of participatory learning activities. This can include community conversations, public forums, dialogues, public community-wide reading programs, reading and discussion series, film and discussion series. I think really the thing that we want to underscore is that the projects involve humanities research as a central focal point. This is like the thing that the project is intending to do. It can include knowledge production and also the dissemination of this knowledge, whether it's, some of the different things that we'll talk about shortly. Similarly, that the project centers interpretation, and we're going to kind of shed a light on how that comes up in some of our grant funded projects. So this can include interpretive exhibits, whether permanent, traveling, short-term, special exhibitions. It can include digital or in-person physical exhibits, but most importantly, that there is public programming that corresponds to that exhibit. Similarly, lectures, walking tours, presentations, performances, anything that relates to, really breaking down the big ideas present in your exhibit is also eligible for funding. And last but not least, we're also looking for projects that are narrative in some sense. So whether that is a book, film, or other cultural program that has a significant public humanities element, so that programming is a real focal point of the project and not just a tangential thing. This can also include oral history projects, story collection, story sharing, and other narrative-based activities. And we wanted just to tease out the two grant programs that are part of Humanities for All. I manage the Quick Grant program, which is the slide, or the left-hand side of the slide. This is a grant program that provides funding for a 1-year project duration, so 12 months, 12 calendar months. The awards, the grants provide between $1,000 to $5,000 in funding. There is no match required. We typically offer 3 grant rounds per year. It's a little bit over 2-month review process, and our next deadline is just around the corner, and that is October 2nd, 2023. And I'm going to pass the baton to my colleague, Felicia. He'll talk about project grants.
Thanks, Lucina. Hi, everyone. Yeah, project grants, longer project duration. The grants are up to 2 years. You don't have to use the whole 2-year window, but you have that much time available. Awards of $10,000 to $25,000. For these grants, we do require that you match our funding over the lifetime of your project, though, over your grant lifetime. We have 2 grant rounds a year. The next deadline will be in January. We'll be making announcements of the August application round before the end of this year. Okay, so here for a few minutes, just want to talk to you a little bit about project grants, what they are, what they do. We have to date funded almost 150 of these. You can take a look on our website. There's a list of capsule descriptions of each of these 149 projects, the organizations that were funded, the titles of the projects, the project directors, and a little description of what each one was about. So we don't have time, obviously, to share all of them with you, but this one, I think, is a really good example that illustrates some of the points that Lucena was making a minute ago. So this, as you can see, is an oral history project that involved Sikh youth in the Fresno region, interviewing elders, mostly family members, but also some community members, recording their stories about their experiences, how they came to California, how they built their lives here, how they've established families. So these stories, these oral histories were recorded and have been shared with the public through various means now. They're on a website. They were compilations were created and shared at several public events. They also created an exhibit that was showcased this summer at the applicant organization, the Fresno County Historical Society. And they are also being shared with Fresno Unified School District, where they will continue to play an important role in serving as a curriculum resource for the school district, for educators and students, as well as other researchers going forward. So this is a good project because it kind of illustrates a number of important points. Lucena was talking about humanities research, knowledge production. Okay, so creating these oral history videos in the exhibit, that's what we consider to be a knowledge production activity. It was participatory. It involved community members, the young people, their families, other Sikh community organizations, as well as obviously the dissemination, both within the Sikh community to the historical societies, you know, quite sizable and established constituency, as well as to future researchers, students, and scholars. So this is a really great example of the kind of project that we like to fund. It was proposed by the Historical Society, stemming from their recognition that there was a gap in the historical knowledge, formal historical knowledge about the history and current, realities about the really sizable presence of this community in their region. So that was a gap or a need that the Historical Society saw needed to be filled or remedied. And so they developed this project, working in partnership with Sikh community organizations, as well as a community media partner, because they themselves didn't have the skills to do the oral history work. So they found a community media partner to work with. And then they also partnered with the Fresno Unified School District to make sure that the reach and impact of whatever they produced would go beyond the immediate participants to affect other people and to have kind of a lasting impact on the community and its awareness and knowledge and appreciation of this little known and under documented, at least until this time, part of their community's history. Okay, back to you, Lucena.
Thanks. And I'll just kind of jump in quickly with a project that I think is also just a really wonderful example of a quick grant project that includes all of the things that Felicia had mentioned, from knowledge production to participatory learning to place-based learning. This was a project that was funded last year This is the Queer and Trans Oral History Project located in the Mojave Desert. And similarly, the organizer of this project realized that there was a lack of information about the lives and experiences of queer and trans community members in the high desert. And so they organized a series of public events. There was this incredible, if you look at the image on the far right-hand side, there's a telephone that was public. It was in the middle of an arts and cultural festival in the Mojave Desert. And you could walk up and actually record your oral history just as you would walk up to a phone booth. So what I would just like to highlight is that the accessibility for something like this, very low cost for admission. Folks could enter into these different learning modules, these different learning experiences. They could take part in it. They could learn about the place that they're living. They could share their experiences and histories. And it was a project that was 12 months in duration. So that included planning, implementation, and wrap up and evaluation. So I think the big kind of highlight here is this is what public humanities can look like. It can look like something that is fun, open to community members, and also, as Felicia mentioned, really remedying gaps of knowledge, contributing to the historical record, in ways that really highlights the experiences of the many, many diverse communities that live here in California. And so we wrote a really great blog post about it. So if you're interested, you can take a look on our website.
Hey, time for some questions.
Yeah, there's a good question in the Q&A box pertaining to colleges and universities. So the question basically is, if I'm part of a college district, a community college district, a university system, can we accept several applications at a time? Obviously, we can't consider an entire university one entity that can only apply one time. So yes, different departments, let's say you're a part of a Department of English or you're a part of the College of Arts and Sciences. Yes, we kind of treat all those different departments as different entities. So yes, if you are part of a university system, yes, you could have the Department of History applying for one thing. You could have the Department of English applying for something else. So basically the answer is yes, we accept multiple applications from different departments within colleges and universities. Another question from Veronica here. Do you need to have your matching funds at the ready before applying? The answer is no, you don't have to have them in your hand, but we do want to see an idea of where you might expect them to come from. So you don't have to have them in hand. You don't have to have grants solidified or in-kind goods and services, on a receipt. We just want to have a good estimation of what the amounts are and where they would be coming from. There's one question left. I'm not sure exactly what the context is about a single nonprofit. I'm guessing that that's about eligibility. So no, a single nonprofit can only submit one application at a time.
And just to add on to Brett's earlier answer about matching funds, depending on which grant you receive, you'll submit your budget when you apply for the grant. You may also submit a budget at the interim middle period of your grant, and then you'll have an opportunity to submit a final budget with your final report, at which point we would need to see the final matching funds allocated.
All right, I'm going to save this question about CDP because we're going to talk about that next. So I invite John Lightfoot to talk about California Documentary Project.
Thanks, Brett, and hi, everybody. Thank you for attending. And we realize it's a lot of information, but I hope this snapshot that I give you of the CDP grant program will be useful for those of you who are interested in applying to CDP or at least knowing more. So before I go into the details of the CDP grant itself, let me just say a few things about California Humanities and media. This organization has supported documentary media pretty much since it was founded in the 1970s as a means to communicate and disseminate humanities content far and wide to the various forms of distribution support and infrastructure there is in the field. So we've supported really, really high quality, great projects over the years, but it's really important to emphasize that California Humanities is, as Luciana mentioned, a public humanities organization, not a media organization. So to some degree, we see media as a means to an end, meaning that it's, again, helping us disseminate humanities content, to generate new humanities content, and to distribute it far and wide. So the way we do this now is through the California Documentary Project. And if I could have the next slide, please, which is a grant program that supports film, audio, and interactive or digital media projects that cover and explore California subjects and issues, use the humanities to provide context, depth, and perspective, and have the potential to reach and engage both statewide and national audiences, if not even beyond that. So the tagline for the grant is California Stories, National Audiences. And this is really a central question that comes up often is how Californian a project needs to be, and we can get into that. But just at this point, know that it needs to have a direct and relevant California connection, and there are multiple variables and multiple nuances to discuss about that. All right, so currently we offer 3 categories for the CDP grant, the research and development and production, which are these deadlines are coming up November 1st. Talk about them first and then talk about next gen. So research and development grants are for projects in their earliest stages. Grants are up to $15,000. A match is required, and we do ask that 2 humanities advisors at least be involved as consultants with the project. Similarly, for production grants, these are grants up to $50,000. Similar match requirement and similar humanities advisor requirement. Now, the thing to note, I just want to put another little point, detail point, I guess, for the humanities advisors is that they're really working with you to advise you and to inform you as you approach the production of your project. So they're meant to be allies. They're not there to, do anything with editorial control, but they're really there to be resources for you. And we can talk about how you work with them in the Q&A section if people have questions, but just know that they're required and important assets to your project. The next gen deadline is actually coming up this Friday. So we decided to offer a second round of this grant program this year. Typically it had been one deadline a year. We're having another one on September 15th. This requires 1 humanities advisor, and these are grants that go to nonprofit organizations that have youth media programs and programming. So they're encouraging young people under the age of 18 to produce documentaries, films, or podcasts about subjects and issues that are of importance to their communities and to their lives. And this was a response to some degree to a changing sort of media landscape where we realized it was really important for new perspectives and younger voices to enter the field earlier. And we hope this is a pathway to sort of diversify and broaden the range of voices that we hear from in California. Okay, so quickly, just in terms of some sample projects out there, I want to highlight this film, Sans on Me by Rodrigo Reyes. This is airing nationally on September 19th on public television. It's a great film. It's definitely worth checking out. And it's a portrait of what really follows 2 very different lives and experiences of 2 Mexican immigrants to the United States. The filmmaker and Sanson, who is serving a life sentence. And so it's about the diverging experiences these both have, but as it relates and circles around California's criminal justice system. In terms of podcasts, A Prayer for Salmon. This is a new audio documentary series from the Spiritual Edge through KALW in San Francisco, looking at the Winnemem-Wintu tribe's efforts to basically remove Shasta Dam and how effective that's been. And it's a deep dive into the lives and culture of the Winnemem-Wintu people. And as an example for the CDP Next Gen grant, this is from CMAC, which is the Community Media Access Collaborative in Fresno. And they actually just had their public programming premiere of the Youth Voices 2023 event at a cinema in Fresno. And so this is, as I said, for the goals of CDP Next Gen, to encourage young people to explore and reflect on and then produce films or podcasts about the subject and issues that are of importance to their lives and communities. And we're breaking for questions here. And then I just also want to give a little plug for that. There's a longer CDP application webinar on September 21st that people are welcome to attend if they want a more in-depth overview of the grant.
Let us know in the Q&A if you have questions, and you can also join John after the session at the open office hours that we'll be having on Zoom. You can talk live and answer any questions you have then too.
I'm assuming the information was just so thorough that there may be no questions, and that's fine.
Excellent.
Ooh, one just showed up.
If we can't join open office hours, maybe schedule office hours later. Yeah, absolutely. You can send an email to the program officer you'd like to meet with. We have our emails up on our website under the staff directory, and we're always happy to set up a one-on-one meeting.
And there's a question about the eligibility for an organization that does work in California, but looks like it was founded in Colorado. That sounds a little specific, and maybe it's good to follow up with Brett after the fact to discuss.
Yes, and feel free to stay on the line at the end of this session, and we can answer eligibility questions then too. Okay. Alrighty, well, let's keep moving for now and do circle back if more questions come up about the CDP grant line. Thanks, John. Next up, we have Library Innovation Lab led by Felicia Kelly.
Okay, thanks, Kirsten. Okay, I know we have at least a couple of folks who are interested in this, so I'll be brief. Every year, and we're now in our 7th year with this program, Library Innovation Lab provides a kind of learn by doing professional development experience for a cohort of 10 public library programmers or programming library staff members in public libraries around the state that enables them to research, plan, implement, and evaluate new public humanities project at their library in their community that aims to engage a group of immigrants, or one group, many groups, immigrants in their community, as well as obviously other people as well. So over the course of a 10-month participation in a learning cohort experience, participants develop skills, gain confidence, make connections within their communities and with colleagues across the state. These grants provide up to $5,500 to each participating library or library service organization, like a Friends of the Library group, to serve as venture capital to allow experimentation with developing innovative and responsive public humanities programming. So on the next slide, again, kind of going back to some of the modalities that Lucena shared with you at the beginning about the many, many different forms or formats that public humanities work can take. Over the past 7 years, our Library Innovation Lab participants have developed just an amazing array of engaging projects and programs to involve their communities. So really popular things are often oral history or narrative writing workshops. We've had people create podcasts and short documentary media projects as well, interpretive art exhibits, or other types of exhibits that document and share immigrant community histories, traditions, experiences. Not surprisingly, kind of hybrid arts humanities projects that highlight the cultural heritage of immigrant communities, showcase traditional music, dance, performing arts, literary arts, culinary arts, visual arts are really popular. And most of these projects have involved librarians reaching out to their community members and building really strong and interesting partnerships with a wide range of community organizations. So artists, scholars, authors, museums, cultural centers, as well as immigrant advocacy organizations are frequent kinds of partners. So if you are a person working in a library setting, we encourage you to apply for this. Our next deadline will be in February, and we'll be doing an orientation or application webinar in December.
Thank you, Felicia. Any questions about Library Innovation Lab? I see Crystal's asking about the application process. And is this a Library Innovation Lab specific question? No. Okay. We'll hold on to that. Okay. Well, do let us know if you have questions. We'll take some more at the end, but I'll keep going as I see we're slowly wending our way up to noon, a little faster than expected. So our last grant program highlight for this session is our newest, Civics and Humanities Middle Grades Grants. This is a grant line that is for supporting civics and humanities education for California's middle grade aged youth, which we define as grades 6 to 8 or ages 10 to 14. The goal with civics and humanities grants are to support experiences that engage middle school students in their communities as civic participants, civic actors, civic thinkers. We define civics broadly. It could mean volunteering at a local food bank, volunteering for a mayoral campaign, getting invested in writing policy or collecting signatures for a local ordinance. It could be something that is tied directly to government operation or more loosely seeing people do things in their community, like volunteering at senior centers or rehabbing the local park into a community garden bed. So we've seen a variety of projects come through this program in its first year, but what they all have in common, again, is that they support civics and humanities learning opportunities for middle grade students, both in school, so we've granted to public and private schools, and out of school settings. So if you run an after-school operation or a summer camp or an extracurricular club at a school, all of these are eligible applicants for the Civics and Humanities Grant, which we're excited to be offering for the second year. There are two strands of the Civics and Humanities Grants. Planning grants are for applicants who are really looking to plan and design a project, work perhaps with education consultants, teachers, student focus groups, and other stakeholders to plan a project that would be ongoing. So these are funds to be put towards research and planning. They're of up to $5,000. It's a one-year grant, 12 months, and the next deadline is coming up February 1st of 2024. If you already have a project that fits these eligibility guidelines, you're working perhaps with a middle grades audience or even a high school or elementary audience, but interested in adapting a current program for a middle grades audience, you could look into implementation grants. If you are starting up or piloting a new project for middle school students that involves civics and humanities learning, you could look into an implementation grant. These are larger in scope and size. They're 18 months long, and the size is between $7,000 and $15,000 to be used over 18 months. We do require a match, and both grants require a humanities advisor or two to be involved in the process. And we are offering both of these grants again on February 1st, 2024. We'll be hosting an applicant webinar early this year. We'll announce that soon. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I also wanted to spotlight a couple of recent projects. So this here is a San Diego-based organization called Outside the Lens. They have created a wonderful curriculum for middle school students to visit Chicano Park in San Diego, which you can see in the photo here. This is a park that has a long history as a site of civil disobedience, and graffiti has been one way that the visual arts community has gathered together to memorialize the civil and civic importance of this site. So middle school students are traveling this year to the park, making many visits, photographing it, writing essays about it, creating responsive media projects to the park, and adding their own signature at the park in San Diego. That's a planning grant project. And then for implementation, this is East Bay Sanctuary Voices. Here you see a group of middle grade students who have been involved in co-creating and co-presenting an exhibit on climate change in partnership with the East Bay Municipal Electricity District. And they are pictured here visiting the exhibit. So do let me know if you have questions about civics and humanities grants. I'll check the Q&A. And I'll also be hosting a breakout room after the session if anyone wants to know more. Okay, not seeing anything. I think we'd better keep going for time, but do let us know if any questions come up.
Thanks, Kirsten. So now how to apply. Everything is online. You can start at our homepage, calhum.org, and at the very top, you will see the link to the grant portal. If you've applied with us before, use your same username and password that you've used in the past. If not, you can register. Now, looking at the slide here, these are basically items that we require no matter what kind of application you're submitting. There's always going to be an application form. There's always going to be some sort of a narrative, a budget, and certification. And then depending on what grant, we may ask for work samples, support materials, recommendations, timelines of activities. And then if you are a fiscally sponsored project, we will ask you to upload your memo of understanding or other fiscal sponsorship agreement, whatever may apply to you. Next, let's talk about applicant support. So first of all, you're on the right track today. You're attending this webinar. We have these live all the time. They're recorded. You can find links on our webpage and on our YouTube. On our webpage, you can find FAQs to all of our different grant programs, as well as you can find some samples of funded proposals to see how they're written, to see what the budgets might look like. We do have one-to-one support from program officers, and I'm going to meld in Crystal's question right now. As a first-time applicant, she's asking how can applicants receive and incorporate feedback. So what I'll say is this, I'm going to answer that question two different ways. First of all, if you've got all your ducks in a row and kind of you're ahead of the curve and you have we have time before the deadline, yes, you can contact the program officer for that specific grant line. You might send them a Word doc of what your proposal is going to be. And, you know, as long as it's not like the week before the deadline, they'll be able to give you some constructive criticism or some feedback, or, hey, this is missing, or it would really look great if you added this part here. They can give you feedback as long as we have time. Now, if it's the day before the deadline, that's realistically not going to happen. Now, on the other hand, if you do submit a proposal and you are declined, we always will offer applicants the ability to receive email feedback and phone calls if necessary on what the strengths of your proposal were, where the negatives were, what areas need improvement. So you can kind of do this on the front end, or if you don't have time to do that on the front end, we will definitely be able to give you feedback after the declination happens. Another way that we can provide support is by utilizing the tools of the trade videos that we have posted online. So a few general tips when you're applying with us at California Humanities: make sure that your project is a good fit. So for each grant lines, we have those guidelines documents. So make sure that you really look at the guidelines document for the particular grant that you're interested in. and make sure that your proposed project is a good fit for what we're looking for in that proposed or in that grant program. Make sure you follow the guidelines and you complete all of the requested data uploads if we ask for them. If we say you need to use an exact template, please use that template. Make sure that you're double checking your math and budgets. Maybe make sure you proofread your narrative. Maybe have your neighbor, the cube next to you or someone in your organization proofread your narrative for you. Make sure you hit submit when all of your documentation is done being uploaded to the portal. And please, please, please don't wait till the last minute. Every single time we have a deadline, we have people calling and emailing at the last minute because there's some sort of a technical glitch or with their computer or their laptop, or they don't understand how to complete the budget. So get the information in early. There's no issues with submitting your application materials early. A couple of tips for grant-seeking organizations. So this isn't just for us at California Humanities. This really applies to when you're applying to grants from anywhere. So as a funder, there are certain things that we have to do in our process to verify that your information is accurate. Just simple things like your address, your organization's address, the phone number, their tax ID, if you're 501c3 or not, if you're a municipal entity or not. So I just put together a list of common things that when I'm doing some research on organizations, I often don't find. So these are just some tips for me. Make sure that your organization's address or addresses and phone is listed on your website. List your federal tax ID on your website. That posting that is not an unsafe thing to do. A company's tax ID is completely public knowledge. You can search for it in a variety of places online. And if you are a 501c3, make sure that your organization's profile is set up and accurate on sites like Candid, GuideStar, or Charity Navigator. Those are different sites that grant makers use to verify that all your information is accurate and up to date. So and I realize you as a project directors might not be the right person to do that, but someone at your organization, a grant associate, a development person, your executive director should be able to make sure that kind of information is up to date. So what happens next? Once you submit a proposal, there is a review that will take place depending on what that grant line is. They might be internal reviewers. We're going to be reading these here at California Humanities. We use external reviewers, experts in the field, experts in the humanities and in California culture. We use a variety of different sources for reviewers. We review on quality and capacity, and those things that we're measuring are always outlined in each guidelines document that pertains to the grant line that we're talking about. The degree of competitiveness, of course, varies from program to program. On average, we run 15%. We fund 15%, but that that definitely fluctuates. These timelines all vary by program. Some applications we might get 30 applications. Some deadlines we might get 150. So it varies. And the timeline also is also going to be stated in our guidelines documents. We always send announcements via email. So if you are funded or if you are declined, you will receive that info via email. Like I said earlier, you definitely have an option to obtain reviewer comments, feedback, constructive criticism, and revised applications are also welcome. So if you submitted for project ABC last time and it got declined, you can certainly do a revision and submit for that same project again. As far as disbursement of funds, yes, that varies by program. That if you are granted, that would be outlined in the grant agreement. Lucinda, your turn.
I'm here. So the question that always comes up is what makes a project and proposal stand out? We recognize that every project is different, every organization, every applicant is different, but these are some core elements that we are frequently looking for, that our reviewers are frequently looking for, that really help demonstrate that the project, as Brett mentioned, is aligned with the goals of the grant program that they're applying to. So first and foremost, that the humanities are central to the project that you are applying for, that they're not like a tangential element. It is, again, that core focal point of your project. That your project is audience-centered and publicly accessible, that your project is responsive to community interests and community needs, that the project scope is ambitious but also realistic given the size of your budget or the duration of your grant period, or even special circumstances that are unique to your community. And for CDP, the potential to reach and engage both statewide and, as John mentioned, national audiences. And just to kind of continue this thread, that we're also looking for budgets that are sound, that all the numbers add up, as Brett had mentioned, and also reasonable, that the cost makes sense for the types of activities and different areas of exploration that are going to happen in your project. Also, that your project team has the needed capacity. That means that they have the qualifications, the experience, the background, and also different forms of support, whether it's different funds available, as well as different community partners or entities that are going to help in the implementation of this project. And last but not least, that the proposal demonstrates a commitment to project partners and community. So I'm going to pass that baton back to Brett, and I think we are at the very tail end of our presentation. So thanks for sticking with us today.
Yep, we'll try to wrap this up quickly here so we can get on to our office hours meeting. So what is required of grantees if you are indeed granted? Of course, we would require a signed grant agreement that would be signed by the authorizing official and the project director. We require you to attend an orientation session to make sure that you understand what the requirements are of the grant. During the course of your grant, if you have any major changes, such as a change in scope, a change to 25% or more of your budget, if you need an extension, if your project director changes, those types of things, you would need to request a change in advance. Again, that's something we would go over in the orientation. And then during your programming, we need to make sure that California Humanities and the NEH, the National Endowment, are properly acknowledged in your public programming and publicity, like a press release, like your marketing, a poster. And maybe if you publish a booklet, there would need to be our logo or some verbiage stating that this project was funded by California Humanities through the NEH. And also, we want to help you promote your activities, your programming. So we do want you to keep us informed of the public-facing activities, so that we can attend them, so that we can market them, so that you have successful events. So you're going to monitor your progress on your objectives. There'll be different forms and such that you fill out. There will be a budget form to keep track of your match. At the end of the project, you'll submit a final report, and then any outstanding funds that need to be dispersed will be done so after that final report. Again, if you are awarded, all of this stuff will be gone through in much more detail at a grantee orientation. All right, so here's a little snapshot of all of our names, what programs we manage, our emails. Feel free to email us. Don't worry if it's the wrong person. We will send your email on to the right person. I'm not sure we're going to take any more questions in this session since we're 5 past the hour, but definitely feel free to email us, and we're going to move right into our office hour session. There, let's see, is the link? Yes, Beth posted the link in the chat. So we were going to pop over into that office hours session. Kirsten, anything in closing?
Nope. Hope to see a lot of you over at office hours. We're going to have breakout rooms for all of these grant lines so we can talk and see each other's faces and give you live feedback. Look forward to seeing you over there. Thanks so much, Brett.
Thank you.